everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of The Rumcast. That's right, it's our 50th episode, and we are so happy that you're here joining us for it. Will, it took us 2+ years to get here, but here we are.
Yeah, and I'm hoping it won't take us 2+ years to get the next 50 on the way to 100. I think we can get there a lot quicker. And in fact, we did pick up the pace along the way. I think the first year was a little slow. We got things in gear in the second year. So we're really getting our act together. And as you said, a special episode. We've got an announcement to make. We've got a bunch of really cool audio messages sent in from Rumcast listeners around the entire world. I need to go back and see how many different continents we got, but I think it might have been more than half. So, a lot of global representation there. Y'all really brought the love and the support, and we really appreciate that. So we edited all those messages together and tacked them on the end of this episode to kind of cap it off with a nice little celebration. We're also going to get into what we've learned from these first 50 episodes. We each have picked kind of our 3 biggest takeaways from talking to people from all over the rum world to continuing our own rum journeys throughout all this.
Spending over hundreds of hours at this point and talking about rum. And dollars.
Yeah.
That's right. That's true.
And just kind of taking a little snapshot of some things we've learned in the process of doing this and, what we hope to learn going forward. But before we get into all that, we did say we had a special announcement. And so we're going to start with that. And one thing about the Rumcast that we promise that will always be true is that there will always be a way to listen to the Rumcast for free. We've been doing 2 episodes a month for a while now. We don't plan to ever change that. That's not going anywhere. But the more this has grown and the more we've seen, listenership grow and just interaction online grow, we've really wanted to do something that allows us to invest in making this more of an actual community where it's a two-way conversation, not just us, publishing episodes and kind of interacting here and there in social media comments and in email. We really want to try to bring the Rumcast community together more in a lot of different ways. And so how we're going to do that is we are launching a Patreon. Woohoo!
Hey,
right, yeah. So you may be familiar with Patreon, especially if you listen to podcasts. It's a pretty common thing people do to kind of give listeners a way to support the show and also get extra cool stuff for doing that. So like I said, we're going to keep doing the show for free. We always will, but we want to kind of create this community, and we're going to start with kind of 2 levels of support. So one that allows you to just kind of support the show if you want, and also get access to new episodes a little bit earlier. So kind of be out there in front of everyone else, find out all the good stuff before the rest of the world does. And then a second level that we're going to start inviting to a monthly happy hour on Zoom with John and myself and everyone else in the community. And hopefully, as we get into a rhythm and stuff, maybe some special guests, maybe some people you've heard from on the show, interesting personalities from around the rum world we'd like to bring on. But really, again, this is just to get started. We want to keep doing a lot more things for this community, but the first thing we want to do is just get the community created, find out what you guys want. Some of the things we're imagining in the future might be private meetups organized around rum events, stuff like that. And this is also going to allow us to invest more in the show. We've been, doing that this whole time, and, it's not a massive financial burden, but we have expenses, and the more we're able to cover those, the more we can invest in kind of doing even more with the show. John and I have we've had lots of different ideas for more content, and having a little bit more to work with would really kind of free up some time for us and allow us to keep doing more stuff.
Yeah, I think not only does it help to cover, like you said, the small cost of producing the podcast, but we do push into it. But also, like you mentioned, Will, creating more cool and interesting segments for the show and really investing in our capability to do that, and talking with the community to find out what it is that they want as well. Giving us maybe an ability to organize things and meetups around future rum events, and maybe, you know, more things I think we're already thinking about, but don't have quite enough detail yet to really talk through. So
yeah.
I think this is what helps the first steps towards making that possible. So it's exciting. Probably anybody who's listened to the show for a while has thought like, okay, this is probably going to be a next step. So I don't think it comes as a huge surprise.
Yeah, and one of the things we've talked a lot about on this show, we spent time talking about rum societies and groups and community and stuff like that. And so really, I think that's kind of what we see this as, is like we want this to be a community that functions like that, where people get to know one another and get to experience things together and just, do cool, fun shit together. So, without getting too specific about everything we want to do, because again, we want to start this and then kind of like pick some directions to go in. But so this is kind of the beginning of all that. And if you want to be a part of it, we'd be super grateful. We're already grateful for like all the support we've gotten from people. And John says it all the time, like that's what keeps us going. So anyway, if you want to
Where do they go?
Yeah, if you want to check all this out, we should probably tell you, you can just go to patreon.com/The Rumcast. So Patreon is spelled patreon.com/The Rumcast. All one word, no hyphens or dashes or anything like that. Yeah, so check it out. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So you can just pull up the show notes, click the link, and check it out. But we're super excited to see this get started, and fun things await for everyone who joins, and fun things will continue for everyone who, if you want to just keep listening, that's awesome too. That's supporting the show, and we're super grateful for that. So.
All right, so now having spoke about the future of the Rumcast and what that's going to look like, now we turn a little bit to look at the past for a little bit here, and 50 episodes worth of the Rumcast and what our top takeaways were from that. I think, Will, this was an interesting topic that I'm excited to talk about. You brought it up, and I do think there's a lot of merit to us now looking back at the totality of all of this and how much time we got to speak with a lot of really, really well-educated and important rum people. And
smarter than us.
Yeah, so many different ways. And we've learned a lot, of course, over that. But figuring out what our top takeaways were from all of that time and even the time we spoke with each other on so many episodes, it was a tall order that you gave there. But I think I've got some good ones. So
I think we probably looked at this in a few different ways. So yeah, I mean, for me, part of the point of the podcast is just getting more knowledge out there about rum. Like, I know it's kind of like cheesy to bring up we've never called it a mission statement, but we've always kind of described the podcast as like helping people navigate the world of rum by talking to the people who are shaping it. So we try to bring people on the show who are really influencing the world of rum in some way, or who have a lot of experience and knowledge to share. And we try to just pull that out of them in a fun and interesting way. And hopefully, us two idiots, we pick up a few things along the way ourselves and learn a little bit. So I think this is a chance to kind of like look back and try to unpack some of that. And hopefully just share some stuff that we've come to learn with listeners. I think everyone, as they kind of go in their own rum journey, they pick up things along the way. And for me, it's always interesting to hear what people are learning or what they think about differently now than maybe they did a few years ago and everything. So we're going to get into all that. And like I said, probably in a few different ways. We usually kind of approach these things a little differently, which is part of the fun. So let's take a quick break and we'll come back with that.
Hey, Rumcasters. Ed Hamilton and Brock Smith wanted to bring rum lovers in the U.S. a chance to experience something that hasn't been very easy to find here previously. Single cask, single mark, single still, unadulterated rum expressions from Guyana. With the release of the new Hamilton Single Cask series, that's exactly what they did. Now, if you want to experience foolproof releases from each of the 4 diamond stills, which includes the Saval Multi-Column, the Versailles Wooden Pot, the Enmore Wooden Coffee, and the historic Port Morant Double Pot, you finally can. Plus, the series also includes releases from Clarendon in Jamaica and Foursquare in Barbados. All 6 of those expressions are extremely limited, and you can get them now at the Florida Rum Society shop online. And hey, you don't even have to live in Florida to be able to order these, because they can currently ship to quite a few states across the U.S. So, head on over to FloridaRumSociety.com/Hamilton soon to grab some of these limited bottlings before they're gone. Now back to the show.
All right, we are back and getting ready to each share our top 3 takeaways from 50 episodes of the Rumcast. Or I guess technically it's from 49 episodes of the
That's
Rumcast.
true, yeah.
Since we probably don't have takeaways from this episode to share. So we each thought up 3 on our own. We haven't shared them with each other yet. So it's really going to be a top 6 of sorts. So personal top 3s, but a group top 6. And I'll jump right in rather than putting you on the spot,
Sure,
John.
sure.
So I'll go first.
Mine are going to be, better anyways, so we may as well start with yours.
Yeah, well, this is the opening act. So yeah, you don't want to put something that can't be topped out there. So I should probably go first.
All right.
So this takeaway for me, I'm going to describe it as don't lose an appreciation for the workhorses. And what I mean by that is the deeper and deeper into rum you get, the more I find I'm either reading about or tasting or purchasing rums that are increasingly rarer or limited in capacity.
Right.
And really, if you're following some rum groups online, it almost seems like the rare and limited stuff is the only thing that people are drinking sometimes. And it can really give you a lot of FOMO, make you feel like you're missing out. And all that stuff is super great and is part of what makes this hobby so fun for people. It's like trying to find that really rare thing or that limited thing, because a lot of times those are things that are really special. But I think you can get so wrapped up in that sometimes that it's easy to forget about the stuff that's always available, the stuff that isn't as higher proof, but is still really amazing in a lot of ways. And I think what really crystallized this for me was an episode that we had about Lance Surajbali's Key Rums of the World series on thelonecaner.com, which is really a series kind of dedicated to these types of rums, the ones that I described as workhorses. So the Appleton 12s of the world and stuff like that. And obviously those come up a lot in conversation as recommendations. A lot of the times though, it's for beginners or for people first getting into rum. And I'm finding that the deeper I get into this, the more I try to still keep up with stuff that's in that range and still buy it regularly. When new things come out that are in there, it's still really fun for me to try those out, because again, I think those things are doing the ambassadorship for the rum world, right? That's what people are experiencing first. Right. And I don't know, just kind of trying to stay a little bit grounded in those. And it's also sometimes I get in a mood where I'm trying so much new stuff all the time that I'm I don't want something new. I want something familiar.
You want to go home to that safe place.
Something like comfort food, old reliable. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think just the more I get into this, the more I try to remind myself, don't lose that appreciation for the things that maybe aren't as rare or aren't as high proof, but that still are really wonderful things that are being created on a large scale, and that can be really hard to do. So that would be my first thing, kind of looking back.
Yeah, so I think that makes perfect and total sense. In fact, so much sense to me that I pretty much had one of my 3 takeaways the same thing or similar. Let me kind of, I'm going to rearrange mine. Okay. Because I'm gonna pull this one forward so we can kind of talk about it together. I came at it from a slightly different angle or approach, but we are ending up in the same place. And that is that, learning about rum for me has been what I would describe as multi-dimensional. Okay. And what I mean by that is when I first got into rum way back and when we started the podcast, I had this huge desire to explore rum being produced in all of these different countries, with the primary thought being kind of they're all going to be unique and I need to try them all, the Pokemon mentality, right? Got to collect them all and catch them all.
The Pokemon mentality. I like that.
While I think this is still true for me today, I still enjoy that discovery process, even after expanding, a lot of my horizons quite a bit. I think what I've also found is that I've learned to appreciate diving deeper into the rum styles, countries, and cultures I already kind of knew and had been familiar with. So it's not only expanding knowledge out, it's also expanding it deeper.
Right. I see what you're saying. So it's kind of you can try to taste and experience a huge variety, but it's almost like if you're just trying one thing from each place, you're kind of experiencing each place on, I don't want to say a shallow level, but a surface level, so to speak. And there can be just as much enjoyment for going super deep on
Exactly.
one country. Like if you get in like a Jamaica kick or
Exactly.
a
Right.
Guadeloupe kick or something like that,
or Fiji or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we're at different places in our rum journey all the time. But so this will probably sound silly to say to you, Will, and to many of our audience members, but for others who might just be beginning on their journey, it's relevant just as well. So Barbados is far more than just Foursquare's ECS series or Plantation's 20th anniversary bottle. There's an obvious point there of the amazing Mount Gay and St. Nicholas Abbey distilleries making phenomenal rums for a long time. But even within the portfolios of all the distilleries that I just mentioned, there's a lot of fun and interesting variations to continue to explore and really define the subgenre there of just Barbados rum in that case. Or, as you mentioned, it goes just as well for Martinique or Jamaica or other classic rum places as well. So I think that's the point. I have found my happy place by continuing to explore in both of those kind of directions, broadening geographically, but also deeper understandings with what I've already become somewhat familiar with and continuing to explore in that way as well.
It would almost be kind of fun on a super nerdy level to like start the year with here are the new places that I want to experience on just kind of a surface level. And here are like the 1 or 2 countries that this year I want to try to go super deep on, you know?
My God. I'm reminded of something that we might end up cutting this out, but board games, my other hobby, which I've mentioned, we have a similar thing where they do a challenge where you play a board game 10 times in 1 year.
Oh.
And that's because the board game hobby expands just like we were talking about rum. There's so many new things coming out and it's hitting you all the time with the new hotness of whatever it is or this new thing that's coming out that you forget, like, wow, there's these old mainstays, like you mentioned, that you love, but if you don't experience them at a deeper level, you just remain on that kind of superficial level with it. So it's almost what you're saying is very similar to that of like saying, hey, let's target something we want to experience multiple times over a period and not just worry about the new hotness out there.
Right. I was also, I should add, I was devastated to get a listener email a couple weeks ago from a listener who specifically mentioned that he really enjoys the little bits of board games dropped throughout as he is a gamer himself. And I saw that, I was devastated because I knew it would mean that I would have to only sit through more board game talk.
There's dozens of us, Will. Dozens.
Yeah. So shout out to Scott. That was Scott who wrote in with that. Even listed in his top 5 games, and I had literally heard of 0 of them. That's like how deep this tabletop board game hobby is. And actually, this will tell you what a gaming normie I am. Is last night I played a very popular game with a cult following for the very first time in my life. Can you guess what it was?
Catan.
It was Settlers of Catan.
I knew it. The way you explained it, I was like, okay, cult following, got it.
I got my ass kicked too.
Oh boy. Yeah. This isn't a board game podcast, so I won't go into my thoughts on Catan, but needless to say, it's the what would I call that? I don't know, Bacardi of board games.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. Well, so it's like one deeper. Like Monopoly's probably the Bacardi of board games, but like one level deeper than that. Catan is an interesting one. It did kickstart the revolution for board games and got a lot of interest in the hobby. But frankly, there's so much better out there now, and that design is dated. It's okay. It's milquetoast. That's what I would call it.
I gotcha.
Fine. Yeah.
Well, you see what you're doing now. You're like the rum snob who comes in and says, hey, that thing you just said you liked, it sucks. And so now I'm never going to play a board game again.
Oh, man. Wait. That's going to be relevant comments to later in this. So
see, we tied it all back in.
Let's remember that. Yeah.
Okay. So was that your first one, or were
that
you
was
just
my first one?
Okay.
I jumped it up. I had it later, but
no, I like that.
I think it matched up very well with yours. So I'm now curious to see if your next one will match up with any one of mine.
I like that. Okay, so my second one, it's a lesson that I've learned, and it's a problem. It's not a problem. It's just a challenge I'm still trying to overcome. And I feel like a lot of people will relate to this, but the way I'm phrasing this is that I think words are a really tricky filter for taste. And what I mean by that is describing taste is so difficult. And if you think about it from this level, like the most accurate way to have someone experience what you're tasting would be for someone to literally like be able to be inside your head and taste what you are tasting. It's like, but we can't do that, right? We can't share. There's not like, you know, people always talk about like smell-o-vision, like being able to watch a TV show and smell what's there. Like there's no taste thing where you can share taste with anyone. So we have to like take what we're experiencing through our senses, and then we have to figure out like what words best describe this, which even that is a challenge. But then you have to take the words and you share them with someone, and they're going to have completely different associations with those words. Like if you think about a word, and the word I keep coming back to, I was talking with a friend. I think it was Andrew Hinton, friend of the podcast, and I think he said funky is the new smooth. You know, like,
oh man,
everyone wanted to get away from using like smooth as kind of like the lowest common denominator of describing a spirit. And funky, in a way, I don't want to describe it as like lowest common denominator, but it's one of those words that to me, people's idea of what that means is so vastly different. And that really comes up a lot in like reading reviews of certain rums, where people will say if you compare some of the reviews for the past 2 Hampton Great Houses, some people will say like one is funkier than the other, and other people will say the exact opposite. And so it's one of those things where like even when you find the right word to describe something to yourself, that doesn't always translate. Like even if you have an amazing palate, that's not always going to translate to making sense to someone else and you know what they taste, because everyone's palate is different, taste buds are different, associations with certain words or certain foods or certain smells, like it's all different. And I don't know what the easy answer is for that. I'm trying to get better at describing like what spirits taste like to me, but I'm also trying to think of just better ways to relate how a certain rum makes me feel. Like, how do you talk about a rum in a way that gives someone an accurate idea of what it will be like for them to experience, right? And I think a few ways I'm trying to get better at that. I try to share when I like to drink something, what's kind of the mood or the vibe that I associate with a rum personally, like what's the setting or the occasion for having this rum. I also like, what does this remind me of? I think producers probably don't like their products being compared to other products, but I think from an enthusiast perspective, if you can say like, it's a little bit like, you know, this product in some ways, and it reminds me of this one in another way. I find that a little bit helpful. And then also like, how often would I drink this can tell you a lot about a certain rum, you know, whether it's a thinking drinker's rum, you know, where you really want to sit down and think.
Pensive.
Or if it's more, you know, an everyday kind of thing. And everyday doesn't mean that something can't be complex.
Right.
A good example of that is I bought a Samaroli recently. It's the Yamon 2011, I believe. And it's a blend of like, I want to say like 7 different rums. Maybe it's got Barbados and a lot of old Demerara's in there, and a little bit of Fiji and some old Jamaicans. And it's 45% ABV, which makes it really approachable, but it's still really complex. And it's like, it threads that needle of it's a rum you can think about, but it's also a rum I can drink every day. So anyway, I don't have the answer to this. I'm just like, I'm trying to get better at like, how do we talk about rums with each other without only talking about tasting notes and things like that.
It's a really smart point, and one that I also agree with and hadn't thought of really, but I think you're right on with how do we find different ways of describing something that are perhaps more creative and less dependent on orange, vanilla. Those are pretty specific, and those will conjure, you know, things in people's minds. But to your point of funky or smooth or all those other kind of larger descriptives, that really doesn't accurately paint the picture for a lot of people. Although I have to say, as an aside, I always thought of funky as being Hago. I wonder if that's different.
I feel like even
people.
That is people define that differently or experience it differently, you know?
Yeah.
And that's also not to say that specific tasting notes can't be good. And like one recent example, you were talking about that Homesky Mauritius release that had that specific grapefruit note. And
Pamplemousse.
right. Pamplemousse.
Pamplemousse.
Pamplemousse. Yes. And when I had that rum, it hit me like right in the face in like a undeniable way. And maybe it was because I heard it from you, but I kind of feel like I would have found my way there anyway. So again, it's not to say all that stuff isn't helpful. It's just, yeah, it's a challenge. And I want to acknowledge that, the more we have a podcast where we talk about rum, like the more I've learned that talking about what something tastes like is really hard. And so looking for new ways to relate what a rum makes me feel like is kind of something I'm continuing to try to get better at.
I definitely agree, and I think you're maybe onto something there with how it's being used, but I don't mean just like in terms of, I would use this in a cocktail versus sip it neat.
Right.
How it's being used in the setting, in the temperament, the condition, if you will, of where you're at. That all seems to make sense, and yet probably you're going to have a lot of variance between people.
You
with
will.
That too.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Is even with that, it's you still have preferences, and and I think that's one of the things that makes food and drink fun things to get into, is that people experience them differently.
Well, they say the first step to solving any problem is recognizing there is one, right?
But maybe there isn't one. Maybe this isn't
maybe
a problem.
It's not a problem. Yeah.
Maybe it's just it's a quirk of what makes this so fun and interesting, and sparks endless conversations. But enough about that one. Tell me your second one.
My second one, it could be seen as related a little bit to that in a way, and the experience of tasting. So I'm calling this one "Take Your Time and Enjoy the Journey."
Okay.
And I have that pretty large and broad for a reason, but I'll start off by saying the number of times that I have prejudged a rum based on a first experience or taste is too darn high.
Yeah.
And I've learned little by little over time that it really does take time to properly evaluate a rum. Yeah, I guess there's still some bottles that you might know at first sip that's not for you, or perhaps some that you overestimate initially based on some other factors. But the key here is, I think, for the vast majority of rums that I have experienced or purchased, they require time for me to absorb all of it. All of the flavors, how they develop over time, and what they might be best used for me personally. So I know we've talked about how there are many people out there, including myself, who've experienced what we perceive as like a real shift in a rum's quality or flavor profile itself. We say sometimes it opens up over time. I know there's a lot of people out there online that have mentioned this. I'm still not convinced whether that's actually true or not, like from a purely scientific standpoint. But what I will say is, from an experiential standpoint, it is absolutely true.
Yeah. 100%.
I don't know why. There could be interactions from what you ate during the day, temperature or weather outside, or maybe just your mindset for whatever reason. But we should be allowing ourselves the time and space to mentally come to an understanding with the liquid. For me, also, I will say this. The more I know about a distillery, the more I can also get a sense of what to expect. So I think there's also an educational learning element there too. But yeah, in short, I would say it's give yourself the time to properly introduce yourself to a new rum, come back to it over several occasions, and discover how it changes for you, if any.
The way that I like to think about it is think about it from the stage of a first impression rather than a verdict, right? I think because those impressions can evolve over time. And sometimes you do, like, let's say you get a sample from someone, you only have a small amount of liquid to kind of like form an opinion on based on that. So I'm not saying like don't form an opinion. Like it's fine to have an opinion, but I think just like contextualize that opinion with, this was the amount of time I had with it. This was like how much I had, maybe how many times I came back to it, how many different tasting sessions, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think like trying to keep an open mind, especially with like a new bottle, like you were saying, because there have been so many times where you have something, the first time you have it, it's just kind of like, well, that was fine. And then you come back a couple weeks later and it's like, what the hell happened to this? This is like, I love this now.
Yeah.
I actually I had that on my list, but I was pretty sure that you might bring it up, so I'm glad you did, because I think that's been a huge lesson for me, is just in keeping an open mind, and really you can apply that to whole categories as well. If you have something from one country you've never had it before, don't just automatically think you won't like anything else from that place.
I definitely agree there. Yep, that's pretty good so far. Complimentary, I must say.
Yeah, it's been a nice tit for tat, I would say. But okay, so my last one, I'm going to take it in a little bit of a different direction. I think the first few have been more about kind of like tasting and that kind of stuff. So this is more kind of broadly about the rum landscape. And something that I keep having to remind myself is that if you think things are interesting and cool right now with rum, just wait like 5 more years, because the more you talk to distillers or even people, you know, who work at distillers or certain brands, is what we have now is really more of a reflection of what distilleries thought people would want like several years ago, right? Because this stuff takes time. When you have a new idea for something, you can't just release it right away. Obviously, there are cases of that where you can, if maybe it's an unaged product or something like that. But even those take some time and planning. So that's the first part of this. The second part of it is that a lot of the distilleries that get talked about the most right now haven't even necessarily been making rum for that long in the grand scheme of things. Or let me correct that. In some distilleries, that's the case. Some, it's they haven't been releasing it on their own for that long. So like Foursquare, in the grand scheme of things, hasn't been around that long, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a few decades that they've been making rum now, but that's still like maybe the first part of their journey as a distillery, really. Worthy Park is another example of that. Obviously, its history goes back a super long time, but like the modern era of Worthy Park, you know, it's a blink of an eye in the grand scheme of things. Hampton hasn't been releasing stuff themselves for that long. So a lot of these distilleries that we really love are still, I would say, in like, I don't know if first phase is the right way of describing it, but like they're still evolving. And I mean, even our last episode with Richard Steele from Foursquare, he was talking about the cane juice stuff that they've been doing.
Exactly.
And it's like, we're just now tasting a little bit of that, but it's been years in the making. Like there's already barrels that are several years old, and it's going to be a few more years before they start kind of being used and stuff like that. So I think obviously a lot of cool stuff has happened in the last 5 years, and that's not to say like rum before the last 5 years wasn't cool. Like obviously there's been cool stuff for a long time, but we're definitely getting to see a lot of cool stuff right now. And so I think where distilleries are going to be aiming for 5 to 10 years from now, I just think we're going to see things like we can't even imagine yet. And so I think it's a really exciting time. And then you also get into like the actual super new distilleries like MOBA or Providence, you know, Kohana, places like this that we've talked about. So there's so much to look forward to. And just that like moving target element of rum and spirits in general is something that I think is so cool. And getting to taste something that's almost like tasting a little bit of the past when you get it, even though it feels like the future when you have it. So yeah, that's just something I think about a lot.
Well, thank you for qualifying your original statement, because you definitely sounded like a rum hipster to start with.
Wait, what did I say?
You're like, yeah, if you think rum is cool now, you don't even know. Wait 5 years.
That's not how I said it. I said if you think things are interesting now, like 5 years from now, it's going to be even cooler. Like that's excitement. That's not. That's not.
Sounds like you're sipping on your hipster latte and.
No. I don't think you understand what a hipster is. That's a celebration of where rum is going and how awesome it is right now. I'm saying there's amazing stuff that's being worked on, and it just takes time for it to come out. And so I'm celebrating. I'm not trying to gatekeep and say like people don't know what's cool. That would be a hipster of me. It's just a reminder of like what we're experiencing now is like in a lot of ways what people were aiming for years ago in the past.
Right.
Like that's
because
the
of
point
the
I'm trying
nature
to
of
make.
the industry.
Yeah.
Right. And the time it takes. And I totally get that. And I was actually just kind of messing with you.
Or even our last episode with Mount Gay and like the estate rum program.
Exactly.
By the time we taste the first rums from that estate rum program, it's like that vision started years and years ago. So that's the element of it that I think is so cool and interesting. And the more conversations we have with distilleries, it's just a constant reminder of the timeline doesn't line up with how people experience it.
The interesting kind of point there that you're making is we should have patience, but also that there's so much great stuff here now as well to experience while we wait. Yeah. So I agree with patience is something. And also another kind of side point to add on to what you're saying there is it's interesting of note that, you know, when we talked with Richard, you mentioned the Foursquare High Ester rum. One thing that he said, you know, sticks out to me still, and he's not alone in this, which is he's going where the market goes. And, you know, so we are the market. right now, but they have to try to hit that moving target, like you said. So 20 years ago, there's a lot of rum distillers and places out there who were not interested in doing those type of things and experiments and high proof, high ester things, because they just didn't perceive there to be a market for that. So why spend their resources to do so? So it's keeping in mind for us, the rum enthusiasts, that, hey, we are driving where we want this to go, but it takes time to get there.
And it especially takes time for the bigger the company is, the bigger the brand, the bigger the distillery, the more time. I won't say that's a universal truth, but like the more time in general it's going to take them to get there, right? Because it's, the common metaphor is it's like steering an ocean liner. It's like you change it like one small degree and you don't notice it at first, but 500 miles later, you're way off your original course. So that's a great example. That's why the first Foursquare ECS release was 80 proof, because that's what the market dictated at the time. And so, yeah, and that's another reminder to don't hesitate to make your voice heard, because the rum world, it's big in the geographic sense, and certainly like in the volume sense. I mean, a lot of rum gets sold, but especially on like the I hate to use the word, but like the more premium side, that's a smaller market, and I
super
think
premium.
Yeah, and like when people make their voices heard, people hear it. Like they hear what you're saying. So don't hesitate to do that, because you really can have an impact on where things are going. Especially when you become part of a community, whether that's starting something where you live or participating in online communities or whatever. So yeah, great point.
All right. So my number 3 is also broad in the landscape as well. So once again, I think we're doing a good job of our thoughts here, even though we didn't pre-plan this, seem to be somewhat aligned. I'll start by saying the really obvious point here, that is rum is everywhere. And what I mean by that is, when we started this 50 episodes ago, a part of my thought way back then was like, gosh, is it going to be quick for us to talk to everybody and kind of run out of people to talk to?
We're done.
I know that sounds silly, but I just didn't really, even though I knew rum is being produced in a lot of places, I didn't know how much rum is being produced in so many places, and more, it seems like every day and every month we're hearing about new distilleries popping up in different places of the world. So it's a really cool thing. I recently I did the trivia session we spoke about, the FRS event, and so I was going to share a quick story related. I wanted to make a challenging question, and I was also trying to make it fun. So I would throw in like a lark answer in every question to hopefully stir up some chuckles. So one of the questions that I did was based on independent bottlers having bottled rums from all of the countries I listed as a possible answers, except for 2. So I said, this independent bottler has bottled a rum from all of the countries except for which 2? And so the answers I had listed were a few of the usual suspects on there, a few maybe lesser known but still available, one which was the correct answer, and then or one of the correct answers, and then as a final possible answer, I put on there Liechtenstein. Of course, with the idea of like, okay, which
no
country
rum
can I
being
put?
made in Liechtenstein?
Right. Which country can I put that could get a chuckle because of it being so obvious and they don't produce rum there? Well, egg on my face, because as it turns out, Liechtenstein does in fact have a distillery making rum. Yes. So as I'm researching this, I find this out. It's called Steinauer Distillery. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that quite right, but it's been around for a few years now, 2014. It makes molasses rum, gin, and brandy. So, I have no idea really, of course, if it's any good and how serious the rum making is there. But the fact is, they are producing rum in one of the smallest countries in the world. And that tells me, without having extensively researched it, rum is really being produced in most countries and being drank in even more. And it's a fantastic, cool-looking bottle with like a metal plate on the front of it and all that. So very interesting to find. So anyways, the point of that story and the point here is that while I think we've covered a lot of ground in 50 episodes, there's still so much left to explore and discover. And that just, puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've just been busy Googling this distillery in Liechtenstein. This is amazing. Yeah, here it is. Rum made from sugarcane molasses, matured in oak barrels for 3 years. And they've already got a 3-year-old rum. Yeah, that would be interesting. I need to do some double checking and see if they're actually distilling it or if they're sourcing it. But
I'm pretty sure they're distilling it. It looks small batch, but I'm pretty sure they're distilling it. I honestly didn't do the extensive research or anything. But anyway, that was an interesting thought. There's another actual sub or secondary point that I wanted to make with this as well. And this one may be a little bit more contentious.
Okay.
So just like rum is being made everywhere and drank everywhere, people who love rum are also everywhere. And the styles or the culture of rum can be very different in a lot of those places. Even more to that point, people here in the U.S. and in many other places are still coming into the fold of rum. Some are experienced in other spirit categories, some maybe not. I have tried really, really hard to be an ambassador and find a way to respect where people are on their personal rum journey, as well as the way a person enjoys rum from a specific place or a culture or a distillery or a style. And I believe that's really important for us as the future of rum, perhaps even critical to the future of rum and as a rum hobby as a whole for us all to do that.
I think what you're kind of, I don't want to say you're dancing around it, but you're talking about like sugar basically, or people being a fan of rum that maybe is looked down upon by parts of the rum community. I think anyone who listens to a rum podcast, like if someone comes up and say that, you know, they love Captain Morgan or something like that, like, you know, we all kind of shudder a little bit. But, you know, obviously there's degrees of that. I mean, we see it all the time with forums. Like someone says, oh, like, has anyone tried this bottle? It's amazing. And it's, you know, it's like Diplomatico, like Reserve Exclusiva. And it's something that gets seen all the time. And like, you know, we know that it is sweetened. And there's a fine line, I think, between making someone feel bad for what they're drinking and also like wanting to communicate, hey, just so you know, I'm not saying this means that you have to stop drinking it, but like that rum is sweetened. That's part of the education process.
Exactly.
And I think how you communicate that makes a big difference in people's enthusiasm. So I totally get where you're coming from. And I don't think what you're saying is like that part shouldn't be communicated. Like just shut up and let people enjoy it, because like we're both big fans of transparency. Right. And that isn't super transparent about that particular, and I don't mean to focus just on that bottle, but I'm saying there's a lot of examples out there where like an average person just purchasing the bottle would have no way of knowing that a rum has been heavily sweetened or flavored in some way. And so I do think it's important to share that part of it, because you know, that influences how people think rum is quote unquote supposed to taste, right? It influences their expectations of rums from other countries and categories and stuff. So I think it's super important to communicate that, but I also think it's important to do it in a way that doesn't make someone feel bad, like you did with my Settlers of Catan thing earlier, and now I never want to play board games again.
That's where I was going to bring that up, yes, because I totally did that. And I this is something I have to work on personally. So that's why I also mention it, because it's not like I'm saying, you know, this is what I've learned about me. I think other people are also working through it as well. I've thought on it a bit. It comes to mind is the Plato's Allegory of the Cave, or perhaps a more modern reference would be the first Matrix movie. You know, but you know, a long time ago, I got fed up with bourbon elitism and the prices. And I think it's incredibly important for the dyed-in-the-wool rum fans to continue to educate on the importance of things like honest age statements, like you mentioned, transparency on additives, GIs, because it's the right thing to do, and we all understand that. But I do think we need to be cautious about how we do that and remain respectful to those that are still, you know, learning.
I was going to say a good example of this is I got a text from a friend just yesterday, actually. He was in a liquor store and had been able to taste something, and he was like, hey, have you had this brand before? And I won't say what brand it was, but it's one that like I'm not super enthusiastic about. And so my first instinct was to respond and say like, oh yeah, like not a big fan for X, Y, and Z reasons. But I stopped myself and I just said, oh yeah, I'm familiar with them. What did you think about it? And he kind of told me his thoughts, and he actually wasn't blown away by it. And so at that point I was like, just kind of shared, you know, my take on it. So I think, again, like you said, you have to stop and remind yourself you don't want to crush people's enthusiasm, right? Because I've talked to many people who are not into sweetened products at all. And that's how they got into rum though. Yeah. So yeah, there's a fine line there. And I think as long as like people are mindful of it. And
right, it's not a radical idea, but I still do see, you mentioned online forums. Man, it's tough. Some forums online can be really just tiresome in terms of the debates and what it feels like staunch tribalism sometimes that we see maybe leaking in from other areas of our lives and things happening.
You don't say. Staunch tribalism in this age.
I think the way forward is, as we mentioned, it's education and having understanding, not through blunt force arguments and shaming of those who might be in a different place with their rum journey at the time. So I wanted to remind everyone that rum is everywhere, rum people are too, and we're all, I think, working towards the future together. And that I think it's important that we all kind of keep that in mind. And Will, I think your example of exactly doing that is the right way to go.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like it's education, transparency, enthusiasm, just trying to be welcoming, I think, to new people who are getting into it for the first time. So, all right, we made it through 6 takeaways from 50 episodes. Can't wait for the next 50 to see what they bring us and what we'll learn next. But this is definitely like, it's an ongoing thing. Like I said, I don't know, 50 episodes in, and I still feel like I'm kind of just scratching the surface of rum. So, which is kind of what you were getting at with that last point of, initially you're like, will we run out of people to interview? And now I'm like, we're never going to get to everyone to interview. Because there's so many interesting people in the rum world. Actually, another takeaway that I had on my list that I didn't end up mentioning, but we've talked about on the show before, is just how how there are so many cool people and smart people, intelligent, amazing people who work for a lot of these distilleries and brands who aren't seen in the public eye. And I mean, I think we've tried to like get more of those people on this show and stuff. And it can be tough because sometimes people are shy and not interested in doing that, or sometimes brands have specific people that they want to go out. But I think a lot of these bigger brands should really start to embrace showcasing the amazing people who work at these distilleries and like supporting them and like giving them that opportunity to kind of go out there and be ambassadors and share their knowledge and share like the culture of the place where it's made. And so that's something, we're hoping to do more and more with the podcast, and but something I'd like to see everywhere in rum. So
so all you huge corporation CEOs listening to this, let your people talk. Get
your people out there and support them. Like, give them the support they need to be able to do that. But so with all that said, again, thanks everyone for listening so much. Thanks everyone who sent in audio messages. We're going to play those at the end of the episode. And if you want to keep going even deeper on this journey with us, go to patreon.com/The Rumcast. And again, the link is in the show notes, but you'll kind of see what we're starting with there. And again, just want to emphasize, like, this is the beginning. I think anytime you do something like this, you kind of want to do it before you feel like you're ready. And so, we could sat behind the scenes and like worked on this for another 50 episodes and, launched it with 1,000 cool things, but we're trying to get it out there.
And still felt not ready.
And kind of like, we want y'all to co-create this community with us. So this is kind of starting it, but big things in store for the future. So we're super excited and hope you are too.
Yeah. And let us know how you feel about it. Tell us what you want us to talk about next. Hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at The Rumcast. You can find us there. We're trying to always post and let you know what's coming out when our new episodes drop, and of course some of the things and activities we do in between. So definitely hit us up there. Host at rumcast.com if you want to email us anything, any thoughts you might have. And again, thank you so much for sticking with us on this long journey, and great thoughts and things on rum ahead.
Hey fellas, this is Todd from the Seattle area. Big congrats on the 50 episodes of the podcast, and I'm looking forward to the next 50. Cheers.
to the Rumcast. Congratulations on 50 episodes to John
and Will. Your podcast has been really helpful to us. We're just starting out on our journey of rums and whiskies. So I guess we'd like to just teach you a little thing about rums.
One important point, really, pronounced Beanley
rum. We actually live about 25 minutes drive from the distillery, so if you ever need us to send you detailed thoughts on how any of their rums tastes, you just let us know.
We have a delectable selection of different samples here. To the Rumcast from the High Proof Brothers, we salute you.
Hey guys, I love your show. You have taught me so much, and I'm very grateful. Thank you, and keep up the good works.
Hey John and Will, this is Kogan from Columbus. I'm just letting you guys know how much I enjoy hearing all the people you talk to, especially your interviews with Richard Seal and Maggie Campbell, some of the best people that we have in rum today. Love the show and just a big fan of rums here, and I'm looking forward to the next 50 episodes.
Hey John and Will, Trader J here. Just wanted to take a minute to say congratulations on your 50th episode. The service you guys are providing in the rum world is invaluable. You guys do such a great job on blending introductions and baseline for those new to rum, as well as interviews and insights for those more seasoned aficionados. The future of rum is bright, and we are lucky to have you both as our earbud guides. Congrats again, and can't wait to see what comes next from the next 50.
Aloha boys from the Rumcast. We're so grateful for all the work you do. This is Kyle over at Kohana Rum and
Art Deacons with Kuleana Rum Works.
We are so thrilled with everything that you guys have shown us and all the platform you've been able to give us.
Thank you so much for everything you do for rum across the world, and keep up the great work.
Aloha.
Hello, Rumcasters. This is Pete Schmidt, co-founder of the Dallas Bourbon Club, but you may know me better as the inspiration for the episode Rum 201. I want to thank you guys for opening my eyes to the entire whole wide world of rum. I love the content you're putting out, and keep doing what you're doing, guys. Cheers.
G'day, John. G'day, Will. Richard Nicholson of New Zealand. You may know me as New Zealand Rum Society. Firstly, happy anniversary. Well done on meeting this momentous milestone. I've been listening since the second episode and have learned so much over that time. Always interesting topics, talented questions and informative guests. So in your honour, I raise a glass of rum, poured neat, of aged pop column blend, and look forward to the next 50 episodes.
Hey Will and John, this is Matt Lowe in Ocala, Florida, part of the Florida Rum Society. Just want to say thank you to you guys for producing such a phenomenal podcast. Those of us who love rum really enjoy being able to explore it more in depth because of the guests you bring on. Congratulations on a 50th episode, and I hope that we see another 100 or 150 more down the road. Thanks. We appreciate you.
Congrats on 50, Rumcast. This is Jim Soper at Jimmy Drinks. That's with an X instead of a KS. Favorite Rumcast, Key Rums with Lance Sarujbali, Navy Rums with Mitch Wilson, and the Boston Apothecary episode. Favorite Rum, Mount Gay XO. Favorite Value Rums, Durley's 12 and a Havana Club 7. Favorite Rum Cocktails, Old Fashioned, Corn and Oil, Tea Punch, Jet Pilot, and the Navy Grog. Cheers, Rumcast.
Hey guys, thought I'd send you a little message. Thank you for all that y'all do, putting out some great content about rum, about the world of rum, talking to great people. This is Ben from North Carolina, and I would say that one of the things I've learned most, it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't listened to the Rumcast, and I think you brought it up on the flights recently. Overproof, I absolutely love it. It's great as a mixer. It's sometimes great neat or on the rocks, and I went straight past it as a whiskey guy to the aged world, and I'm learning that straw color is great on some of those straw rums. The overproof's great. So thanks for reeling me back to some of the unaged stuff. Appreciate y'all and everything you're doing in the rum world. Thanks.
Hey Rumcast, this is Chris Twiggs. I'm a member of the Florida Rum Society, and I'm down in Miami right now for the Miami Rum Congress, and I just want to thank you for everything that you've done to educate me about rum, and I want to encourage everyone to join your local rum society, and if you don't have one, it's time to start one.
Hey guys, congrats on the 50th, shouting out from Sarasota, Florida. One huge thing I love about the rum scene is the uniqueness you can get from each region, distillery, bottle even. Every time you go to the store to pick something new up, it can taste completely different from the last thing you tried. I think that's arguably one of the coolest things about it, in my opinion, and a big shout out to the FRS.